Plexi and a Matchless together, never going to sound bad. Hey guys, welcome to That Pedal Show. Dan here.
Mick here. Hello. It was deliberately loud.
Yeah.
As you can see, the dB meter has returned because today we're going to be talking about volume in a roundabout sort of way. And I deliberately played loud there. It is the morning, although
Technically it's still the morning. It feels very morning.
We've only just got filming. It's 11:30. How is that even possible?
It's how we do.
There is a reason that it's taken so long.
There's been extra stuff to set up today.
There is technology involved. As you've seen by the title of today's video, we're finally having a look at Boss's Waza tube amp expander and the interesting questions that arise around it, which are, Daniel?
We have the attenuator in there that has a couple of selectable resonant frequency points, which is very interesting.
Which the universal audio aux does not have.
No, it has a single point.
Because when Boss, let's rewind very briefly and do this very briefly. Dan and I went to Boss last October, maybe?
Yep. Boss Japan, that is, people.
Yeah, we went to Japan. We were very grateful to be the guests of Boss in Japan, along with Ola England and Rabia Masad, who both deserve the honkiest honks. Splendid humans. So
good
they
eggs.
are.
They're good eggs.
Anyway, among the secret things that Boss showed us was the prototype of the tube amp expander, the Waza tube amp expander, of which there is a detail going across the screen now. And the first thought was, ooh, this is an aux-alike.
Yeah.
Universal audio aux, kind of redefine the direct to console, to recording device, to out front desk with mic modeling, although they don't call it modeling anyway.
We went to a real world studios and recorded a couple of songs with the aux.
Yeah.
And yeah, we both like the aux. It's
very much.
Really well thought out. Sounds great. The user interface is magic. Yeah.
Yeah. So the questions are, the immediate question for everyone was, should I buy the aux or the tube amp expander? But as we're going to get into today, they are very much not the same product.
Yep.
We're not going to slavishly A/B them. We are just going to use them and get into some stuff. And because there's no point slavishly A/Bing them because they do different jobs. So we're just going to use them. We're going to explore some of the features and we're going to get into that hopefully in a understandable a way as possible.
Yes.
The place to begin is what you just heard was nothing attached to either amp.
Yep. The auxes and the tube amp expanders are not plugged in.
So I think what we should do, Dan, play a bit and see what you think and have a feel. And we'll do that. We'll just have a real brief play of the two amps and a feel with some of the pedals we've got on the board.
Okay.
And then I think what we should do, it was something we never do, is set up a loop, have it playing, and then what you'll hear by way of introduction to the two boxes is a kind of seamless. As seamless as that pedal show
magic
could ever be. Obviously, the seamless stuff is down to Simon, because me and Dan being seamless is, well, it's like asking your dog not to eat his dinner, isn't it? There's your dinner. Don't eat that till later. Yeah, right. Not going to happen.
No.
Let's just have a play. We'll switch between the two, see what we think, see where we are, see how we feel, etc.
Cool. Lovely. So the two amps today, we have my Matchless HC30 head going into the Hughes & Kettner 2x12, a couple of greenbacks in there. I'm still sorting out my own
Struggling
cab.
a bit, aren't you?
Yeah, well, just got to find the right, cab. But the Matchless is magic. Used it live for the first night the other night at the Joey gig, Joey Landreth, and just magic. Best guitar sound I've ever had. Anyway, I'll be using that with the tube amp expander. And then on mix side, we have the Matchless 1959, I want to say LP.
two bits wrong there. First, Marshall. 1987 X.
Why did I say 59?
To be fair, the 1959 is the 100-watt plexi.
Oh, yes,
Yeah.
okay.
And the 1987 is the 50-watt plexi, and ours is the 50-watt plexi reissue with a loop.
Right, okay.
Yeah, although
That
we're not,
one.
we're not using the loop.
Right.
Yeah.
And the aux will be...
The aux will be on that. And that's a 412 AX cab, so it has greenbacks in the 412.
Oh, it's Greenback City.
Yeah, it's Greenback City, so we're greenbacks all around today.
Okay, cool.
Greenbacks all
Right.
around.
So, starting with the Matchless.
That is an absolutely glorious. That cab is working so well with that amp.
Yeah, I think Greenbacks is the way I'm going to go, I think.
Yeah. Well, try a greenback and an H30. I think you'll like it. Anyway, I've always liked the sound of that cab.
Yeah, it's very nice.
Anyway,
Very nice.
so that's the Matchless. I mean, just insert superlatives here.
It's emotional for
A
me.
fabulous guitar sound. Yeah. To wit,
To
a very basic reissue Marshall. There we go.
It's great.
I don't know what that said. Must have been almost 105 on that last.
I'd love to know what that last note was.
It's loud, yeah. We're not going to be playing that loud anymore today, because that's any more than a few minutes of that is getting into dangerous territory, isn't it?
Sure.
In this room as we are today. But
Strat and Marshall. It's classic.
Yeah. Talk about dynamic, everything coming through, pick attack,
Feel under the fingers.
D&M drive's got quite a lot of gain on there. I just roll the volume back and it's nice and it's. I mean, that's it for me.
Yeah.
I don't know why I don't use that amp.
So
but anyway.
So these are sounds that we're both very comfortable with. We both know very well. I'd dare say intimately. So I'm really interested to see how we're going to go.
So let's do the thing we never do and do a little chord loop.
Okay.
Yeah. And then we'll see if we can make this work.
Okay.
So what we'll do is we'll set up the chord loop, just a little bit of playing, and then we'll switch between the matchless as it is and the Marshall as it is, and then we'll switch. We won't do anything except plug the tube amp expander and the aux in, and set them as kind of as unity as possible.
Yep.
Might be a bit of reduction in volume. There will be with the aux because it always attenuates. So we are going to get a bit of a reduction in volume.
Right. Interesting. Well,
It's just what it is. We're dealing with variables, people.
we are.
Shall I do something? Do you want to do something?
You do something.
Okay.
Yeah.
I've just got to remember how to clear the loop. I think you set it playing and then you press and hold. Yeah, there you go. Right. Cool. On the floor, we've got a TC Electronic Ditto looper, which is connected to input 3, which means I have to pull my thing out of here. Okay. 1, 2, 3, 4. That will be as interesting as it is interesting. Kind of the boring comparison there. But, so what did we notice? The aux attenuates immediately. So it's already, even though on the front panel there is a 5-position switch called speaker volume, and in position 5, that's the loudest it will go. So the aux is physically attenuating the amp from level 5 down to level 0, which is off.
Mm-hmm.
So it's 6 positions. But even in level 5, it's still attenuating a little bit, and it was taking, I don't know, probably 3 dB, something like that off. I can't, the dB meter will tell the story, but it was noticeably quieter in the room. What did we notice from there's something very interesting about the way the Boss attenuates, right? So in the UAD OX, it's physical attenuation.
Yep.
That you're basically always hearing the amp. There's no reamping going on when you're hearing it straight through to the amp. Forget about the app for a second, we'll get into that. But when you're hearing it through the cabinet, it's just a straight attenuator, a reactive load attenuator. The Boss is different, right?
Yeah, so the Boss still has the reactive load, but instead of still using the power amp section of the amplifier to power the speaker, what happens is the reactive load goes into another power amp. And it's a solid-state power amplifier, which means that you can amplify as well as attenuate. It's similar to the power station,
Yeah.
but the power station's got a
Back there behind
yeah,
you.
and I've always been a massive fan of the power station. I love that thing. Valve power amp in it though, as opposed to the solid state power section of the Marshall. Sorry, solid state power section of the Boss. There's too many brand names for me to focus. Now, the other thing about the attenuation in the Boss unit is that you've got selectable resonant peaks. So the resonant peaks is something that happens. It's a byproduct of the physical process of the coils of the speaker and the interaction between that and the output transformer of the amplifier. You get these resonant peaks.
Because impedance is frequency dependent. Is it something to do with that?
It has to do with it has to do with anything with a coil, like your pickups have got a resonant peak in them.
Yeah.
The speaker, if we measured, if we had that on a scope, and you could see how that changes depending on the cabinet that the speaker's in, the sort of speaker it is, it's quite radically different.
Yeah.
And the relationship between the speaker and the output transformer, it's everything. It's certainly the way that the amplifier sounds, the way it feels. It's a huge factor. So what Boss have done, they've given you the resonant peak down at the low end, which you can move around, but then you also have like a presence, a peak for the presence, so that you can move those around and get in the same ballpark as what happens with a 4x12 closed back, 1x12 open back cab, so
those two things are set in OX. You can't change those in OX. So OX kind of assumes one resonant peak, or one relationship, if you like, is probably a better way to describe it. Whereas in the Boss, it's changeable. So we'll get into that in a sec, because that's all available off the app. So right from the top, it's important to say points of difference for anyone interested at this point. Two really boring practical things. One, the Boss uses an IEC mains adapter. The OX uses an adapter with a specific connector on it.
Right.
That's very expensive if you lose it. Sorry, Tom.
Did we lose one?
Yeah.
Okay.
So that's a plus point for the Boss. Secondly, what else did we say? There was something else practical. The Boss has XLR outs.
Yes.
The OX has TRS, not a massive thing, but XLR is just, if you're in a professional recording environment, XLR is, I don't know, I just feel happier with XLR for reasons I don't really understand. So those are two practical things. But then after that, one really important point of note with the Boss is you are never, ever, ever hearing your amp's power section.
Well, the power section isn't connected to the speaker.
You're hearing it reamped. You're hearing your amp's power section reamped.
There you go.
Yeah.
Yep.
So you are hearing it, and the reactive load and everything is working on your amp's power section, but it is always being reamped.
Yep.
Whereas in the OX, it's never being reamped. You're just hearing your amp attenuated.
Yeah. So
It's an
imagine,
important point of difference.
Yeah, absolutely. So imagine that you've got the amplifier cranked, and that power section is doing what it does, creating all those lovely harmonics. Then that power section basically goes into another amplifier, and that amplifier is your master volume.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's the difference. Whereas in the OX, that output is simply attenuated.
Yeah. Obviously, that all is null and void once you get into the virtual world of the direct outs and the IRs and all of that, which we'll explore. So, Dan, let's have a look at tube amp expanders. Okay. What it has in terms of being able to just basically take that aggressively loud growling amp, turn it down, and affect the tone from there.
Okay.
In the world of miking the cabinet, so we won't get into the direct sounds just yet.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yep. Sure.
So,
so with the Matchless, I generally use it no master volume and almost just ticking over to give it the maximum amount of headroom. But the one thing about these amplifiers is that when you do turn them up, that the 4 EL84s in the back really start to come alive, and that whole power section, that sound of just the Matchless turned up and doing its thing is legendary.
It's crazy loud, isn't it?
Crazy loud. It's rated as 30 watts. I'd love to actually find out how much power it's putting out. You know, it's huge. It's
30
huge.
watts, schmerty watts. It's one of the loudest guitar amps I've ever heard.
Right.
Yeah, if you take the high watt out of the equation, it's up there.
Yeah. So this is the Boss suggested setting for an open back 2x12. Okay, so I've changed the reactive load.
To what do we know?
So I've gone from where it was low, it's now high mid in the resonance, the lower frequency resonance, and then on the presence, it's now in high.
Yeah, cool. So we've got 4 selectable settings for the low and high.
Yeah, so you can you got 4 down here and 4 up there.
I'll turn the tube amp expander down and start cranking the Matchless, yeah?
Perfect. So yeah, it's just that volume control.
Yep.
That's all you need.
That's mega.
One of the difficult things with this is because to get the amplifier working at that level, because all that gain there is just from the amp.
Yeah, there was
right?
no pedals.
No
just to
pedals at all.
confirm that.
And for the amp to be working like that naturally, it would be so loud that there's no way that you can be objective about those two sounds, because the experience of listening to that, the real version of that, you cannot be objective about that, you know, because the other big thing about that is that you are taking away the way the speaker works when it's pushed so hard. We still have that, the resonance thing, which is great, but there's a different thing that happens when the speaker is pushed. But I will say that sounds fantastic, and I really like being able to change those resonant things, you know, specifically to get to match the cab with the head. Yeah, I think that's really, really cool.
Okay, so just one final point on that then. If you just play something again, Dan, I'm going to have it really loud in the room, which you'll see on the dB meter. And then we'll have it really quiet in the room, and I will up the input gain of the microphone.
Okay, yeah, cool.
Okay, so
yeah,
if you just, let's get a cooking sound going again. Hopefully what you will have heard in your headphones there is, as I turn the amp down to begin with, the sound will have almost gone away because the mic sensitivity is set pretty high, pretty low, sorry. So as I turn the amp down, the sound will have almost gone away. It would have sounded really thin and weedy. And then as we push the input gain up on the microphone input there, on the UAD input thing, it should have come back to a decent volume in your ears, and you should have been able to compare the sound of it really quiet in the room with the microphone loud, and really loud in the room with the microphone quiet.
Cool.
For your interest, we went from about 100 dB to about 78.
You know, that's the most comfortable 100 dB I've ever played. It was so, there's nothing uncomfortable about playing at that level.
Yeah.
It was just, I thought, oh, okay, I'm waiting for it to get really loud. I mean, this is just ace.
Yeah. Well, it actually, I was trying to get it up to 100, 203, and it wasn't really happening. I think there was so much compression going on.
Oh, okay, right.
I think we'd sort of reached our peak by that point.
Sure.
I mean, there was more left on the speaker level from the tube amp expander, but it was just getting more and more and more crunchy.
Okay.
So,
because of course that is going to as you turn the tube amp expander up, we're not going into a crazy headroom PA speaker. You know, we are going to start. We're still going into guitar speakers.
The cabinet is still doing its thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Just to make the point, we are still listening to mic'd cabinets, right, up until this point. Let's do that with the OX. One of the things that I was also doing was I was changing the bottom and top resonance as the tone got quieter, because if you know anything about the way you perceive sound at loud and quiet levels, Google something called the Fletcher-Munson curve, I think it's called. Basically, at low levels, it helps to boost bass and treble to be able to hear those things. You get like a smilier EQ curve, so it sounds nice. And as you get louder, you need less bass and maybe less treble. So that's kind of what I was doing. I was trying to attenuate the bass a little bit as it got louder.
Okay, cool.
Which is what those two controls on the front of the tube amp expander do so well. You can control that resonance.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, control where that peak is.
Yeah. And that's one thing that the OX does not have.
No.
So at this point, we're just going to hear the OX in attenuation mode. We're not going to be hearing any of the direct sounds. I shall change to some humbuckers, Daniel.
Okay.
How about that?
Yes, very good.
To keep the humbucker people happy.
Do you need me to be Johnny on the spot with the...
Probably, yeah. So I think what we're going to do is we're going to do exactly the same thing that we just did. We're going to hear the Marshall as it is now with the OX in its number 5 position. And then what Dan's going to do is attenuate the amp and turn it up so it overdrives more. And it will overdrive very quickly, this amp. So we've attenuated all the way to off there. What you will have heard is it just getting quieter and quieter and quieter. If Simon could man the gain control on the amp now, if you could bring that, if you could stick us back in position 1, Dan. Simon, if you could turn the mic gain up so that this is peaking at whatever it was before. We won't leave the plexi there too long because it will probably blow up. It is literally full on. There's not much to conclude from that other than that one thing that was really good about the tube amp expander was being able to kind of deal with that bottom and top end resonance.
Yep.
Whereas in the OX, we were having to rely on the amp's EQ, which you probably didn't touch, but also the balance of the high treble and the which is where you got the tonal difference out of it.
Yeah.
Because certainly in the full attenuated mode, it was really mushy, really bass heavy. Sounded killer though. Sounded really good.
Sounded really good. How would it feel like?
Yeah, I mean, once you get down, for me, once you get below 80, I can't.
Sure.
It's like being into an amp modeler with headphones on at that point. There's no feedback through the guitar whatsoever.
Right.
It's just, it wouldn't matter what guitar you were playing at that point.
Okay.
And then once you get up above 80, that's when you start to feel it. And by the way, that means 80 in the context of where we have it today. That might not mean 80 if the dB meter was here in front of you. So just in the context of where we are today, the number is largely arbitrary, but at least in the context of where we are today, it is a constant. So above 80 in this room today, with it over there, that's where I could start to feel the guitar again.
Interesting.
And I could feel the interaction of the guitar in the amp. And then obviously when we get up loud, that's just...
like when I was on 4, just notched back 1, even though on 5 it's still notched back 1, so 4 better to notch back a couple, and it just starts to break up. That's the sound. That's the sound.
Yeah.
Just
because there's still some dynamic there.
There is, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that's a great general point about attenuators. For me, they always sound best when they're,
just off 1.
If this is off and this is 100, they sound best there.
Yeah.
And down here, it's like, get a small amp.
Sure.
Isn't it, at that point? Yeah. Would you say?
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, so maybe that is a basic overview of what the two do in terms of attenuation. So let's perhaps spend a little time on direct sounds.
Sure. Yep.
One really interesting thing about both of these products is they both have inbuilt effects.
Yes.
How does that work in the tube amp expander, Dan?
So if you imagine that the amplifier, really the output signal, or the input signal to the tube amp expander is the output signal from the power transformer of the amp. Now, normally, if we had that amp cranked, and this is one of the misconceptions about effects loops in these amplifiers, that overdrive is coming from the power section as much as anything.
Yeah.
So with the effects, and if I put a delay in the effects loop of that amplifier, it is going to mush out, because it's still the preamp into the effect, back into the power section.
Yeah.
And that, that power section is distorted. What these units are really great at, especially when recording, is that overdrive created by the power section, the effects are fed from that signal.
Yeah.
So, you're not feeding a delay into a really compressed power section. So I think both of these units have reverb.
I think so. I think reverb and delay. Actually,
both have reverb and delay.
We'll get into that in a sec.
Yeah. So that's I think for recording, and this is where these units shine. Being able to take my Matchless into my tiny little office at home with one of these and plug into the computer and get that Matchless grind that I absolutely love recorded, but then also, being able to manipulate some effects and reverb stuff and that magic.
I think we might have to go to headphone land for this, for it to make any sense.
Okay.
So I just need to find a headphone extender. Okay, we're in headphone land because what we're hearing now is the direct sound. So we're hearing the direct output of the Waza tube amp expander. We've got the speakers turned off in the room. Just prove that, Daniel. Can you just play something for me?
Huh?
Hilarious. So the first thing I'm going to do is get into the cabs and mic modeling in the tube amp expander. I'm going to cycle through. In fact, I can probably say, because there's no bleed into the vocal mics. So Ganyi, Daniel, this begins with a 2x12 standard cab. Nice. Here's a 4x12. By the way, what you're hearing is you just got an email from Netflix, Daniel. Yeah. Your
How did that happen?
Debbie Does Dallas season 28 is ready to watch. We're also hearing two mics. We're hearing a condenser 87 on the cab, and we're hearing a room mic as well. So can you turn the room mic off?
Yes.
How do you do that?
Just click that and get it anechoic.
Anechoic.
Yep, anechoic.
And that means off.
That means off.
So you're going to hear the room mic off and on. Cool. I'm going to leave the room mic off. I'm going to change it to a ribbon. Please tell me there's a ribbon. There's no ribbon.
No ribbon.
Condenser 87, condenser 421, dynamic 421, dynamic 57.
Isn't that a scroll thing?
Can't scroll.
Okay.
All right, so we don't think there's a ribbon. Sorry if there is, we can't find it. Here's a 421, Sennheiser 421. We're going to get a couple of those, by the way. That's a 4x12. Keep going.
Okay.
Okay, really interesting. There's something called 2x12 and 2x12 FOH. FOH meaning front of house. Listen to the difference between the front of house, which is this one, and the standard 2x12, which I'll do next. So more low mids and less high end in the standard one, and less low mids and high end, and less low mids, low end, and much more high end for the one you send to the front of house.
Right.
That's really interesting. Okay, we could literally do this all day, so I'm not going to keep going through mic types and cab types. You can do that as you want, and you can load in your own IRs, right?
Yep.
So let's get onto the effects section. Should we keep it as the 212 standard?
Yep.
Dynamic 421, we like that. Small room.
Great.
Room mic sounds great, doesn't
All
it?
good. All good.
No problem there. So to get to the effects, we come back to here, do we?
That's the ones.
Right. There's a compressor. Let's just play with the delay and the reverb.
Yep.
Oh, wow. Nice. Hit it. Wow. Reverb, baby. Here's a plate for you. Clearly, you could deep dive this. You could load in your own IRs. You could go to town on mic positions, on mic combinations, and all of that. Tell you what, though, I mean, I don't know about you, but in my headphones, it sounds really good.
Sounds great.
Right, so same thing with the Ox and the Marshall. We've got the Marshall turned up a bit so that it is overdriving.
Okay.
There is no sound in the room. You're hearing a direct sound, okay?
Yeah.
And this is currently a ribbon 121 on a 4x12 loaded greenback in the Ox software. So what I'm adding there is I'm adding a Sennheiser 421 in along with the ribbon.
So you're able to mix the mic levels
and hear how the mid-range character changes. And similarly, you can add room mics. Here's a condenser stereo room pair. And you can keep going with that. Move the mic positions, etc., etc., etc. I'm just going to change the cab just for a bit of fun. That was 4x12 GB25 punch. Let's go to 4x12. No, let's go to a boutique 2x12. This is like a two rock 2x12. You know what this needs, Dan? This needs some outboard effects. So let's try plate reverb. With some pre-delay. Then we'll go for some proper delay. I apologise, this is so boring. So there are a bunch of different delay types. There was a dual delay, a ping pong, a chorus delay, a flanger, coquet. Different types of modulation, nice. Not so much depth.
Definitely has that produced sound to it. It's like in this recording studio,
Yeah.
and these are being added post at the desk.
Because it's outboard
It is
gear,
outboard
right?
gear.
And then just finally, we'll add the 1176 compressor on.
Let's just throw 1176 on there. That's so cool.
Come on then. No compressor. Compressor.
Just let me hear this with the Echorec in the front of the amp.
I'll turn the compressor off. Definitely not unhappy.
No, it sounds great. It really
There
does
is,
sound
I would
great.
say, in both units, there is that kind of, as you said, like the high-end produced kind of sound, which, you know, it's what you want when you're recording, isn't it?
Yeah.
Arguably, it's what you want when you're recording.
Yeah.
Certainly very enjoyable to play, to get lost in all that ambient, you know, when you slap the delays and the reverbs on, and actually the compressor was nice to play too. What would be really interesting is to hear the effect of the latency, what that's
Sure.
doing between the mix of the... Easy enough to fix.
Mm.
You know, just drag the waveform.
Sometimes I play so ahead of the groove, I add latency.
You could do with about half a second
I
latency.
can. When I first got my first Line 6 Spider, I sounded awesome. Yeah, it's... So for me, it's really hard because we're sat here with the amps loud and you put the headphones on, it's like...
It all goes away.
It kind of all goes away. So, you know, you'd be splitting hairs over the sonic stuff. I love the interface.
Yeah, okay, so let's if you are choosing between tube amp expander and aux, it should be a pretty easy choice because they do very different jobs.
Yeah.
I mean, they enable you to do some of the same things, but they do it in a very different way, and that'll either appeal to you or it won't. The user interface on the Boss is ugly. It's really ugly, but it is easy to use.
Yep.
It also works with any computer.
Yes.
One of the big downsides of the UA one is they are only just now developing interfaces for anything other than an iPad.
Okay.
So until now, you had to be iOS,
Sure.
and I think it was only iPad.
Really?
I think.
Okay.
Please check that. Please double check that. But I do know that they were developing a PC one as well. So that does improve the OX's lot a little bit. As we said earlier, the power supply on the OX is annoying because it's a bespoke thing, so don't lose it. The Boss has an IEC, which is great. If you lose an IEC, you can just go and steal one from anyone else.
Yep. With the Boss as well, the Boss is MIDI controllable. So if I'm using this live, for example, I can give the sound guy to XLR.
They both
outputs.
work stereo, by the way. We were all mono today.
So if we're doing like adding stereo effects and that, given the stereo things, but I can save 10 presets that I can record via MIDI.
Nice.
So I can have my clean sound, it might have been open 2x12.
Yeah.
Go to my rock sound, it might be a closed 4x12. And yeah, I can in the computer program nail those tones and then store them in 10 slots.
Yeah.
Now, once I've got those stored in there, I don't need the computer.
Right.
Right.
You can just do it from the front.
I can dial them around to get those in, and I can record them via MIDI as well.
OX has the same thing on the front panel there,
Right.
I think. Yeah, rigs. So you can save your rigs in. I'm not sure if it's MIDI controllable. I don't think it is. I'm just going to double check. But again, if you didn't have the interface to hand, you can just select them from here. Watch this, Dan. Amazing. This will be so interesting for you at home who can't see this. Maybe actually we will do a detail.
Okay. Yeah, it's very cool.
So there you go. So you can save stuff in there. Any sign of any MIDI? No. Warms my heart, mate. Cool. So I don't know. Different tools for different jobs, maybe.
Yeah.
My brain can't get over the fact you're only ever hearing reamp. That I can't get over that, even though it sounds good.
Yeah. It's it's a thing.
Yeah.
But I can see if on stage volume is an issue. So there's two things with that reamping. If on stage volume is an issue, you can still use your amplifier, you can still get that sound, and you can still have sound on stage, but controlled. But it's still the sound of your amplifier working, and that's what's going in front of house.
Yeah.
Okay?
I did a great job of that, actually. The Matchless was compelling.
Yeah.
I have to say.
Yeah, in many ways. But also, if you're using like a champ or something, you can then, same thing, but then you can amplify that to a point where that works for you on stage, and the front of house is still getting that signal.
Yeah.
So I think as a live tool, and because, all the MIDI capabilities and things like that, I can see that being a real asset. Actually, I know guys who are using these now live for that reason. There's loads of, digital things out there and emulation stuff that's great. This is like that halfway point that I've got my amplifier and I love this, I love my pedals and I'm, but I need to be able to have the flexibility of controlling that sound and still giving this front of house exactly what he needs.
Because you are probably, or she, you might be screaming at the screen now, why on earth, if you're going to go to all this, don't you just buy a Kemper or Helix? And for me, the answers to those questions are predominantly to do with what you're sticking in the front of the amp.
Sure.
So they, pedals, these kind of pedals that we like don't work in those environments in the way that they do with these kinds of amps. So you, like you said, you want to keep the sound that's familiar to you and not go the whole hog. It is a really nice halfway house to something usable.
Yeah,
isn't it?
there's a level of consistency that, and I think that's what, if you're doing a big production tour gig, you're expected to have a level of consistency, and I think that's what rigs like this give you.
And it's totally relevant right now, isn't it?
So relevant.
I hope that in 5 or 10 years we'll be having a conversation where we go, God, do you remember all those blooming things that made our guitars quieter? God, we don't have to use those anymore.
And
loud guitars are okay, people.
They're
okay.
They're fine.
In the meantime, these solve a lot of problems.
Brilliant. Cheers, guys. Hope you enjoyed that. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah, it was really interesting.
Yeah. Okay. Massive thank you to everyone that's gone to thatpedalshowstore.com and grabbed yourself a t-shirt. You can be twinsies.
Yeah, we're
You can be
twinsies today.
triplets with us.
Interesting. I think we've got some inconsistency in the yellow, Dan.
Really?
Yeah, I have to have a word with the supplier, I think.
We have some OCD medication coming on sale on the site very soon as well. Also, thank you to everyone that's got
Please go
stuff.
there.
It's brilliant. To our patrons on Patreon, guys, we literally couldn't do it without you, and we're so grateful for each and every one of you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Also, to our preferred retailers in the UK and Europe is...
Anderton's Music of Guildford in Surrey.
And in Australia.
Would be Pedal Empire of Brisbane, Queensland.
Yes, lovely bunch of people.
Yeah, we may have we're looking at what to do with the USA now that Rift City is sadly no more. So
yeah.
Who knows where that's going to go?
Thanks, guys, for watching. If you've liked that, please subscribe as well. Have a great day, and we'll see you soon.
Bye-bye.
Bye.